Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on the digital transformation of the Pathology Laboratory at Kameda Medical Center in Japan. My name is Ashley, and I'll be a moderator for today's session. A couple of housekeeping items before we get started. Today's session is being recorded, and a recorded link will be sent to you following the webinar. For any questions during the presentation, please type them up in your question box in your control panel. Questions will be brought up towards the end of the webinar during the Q&A session. So let's look at the agenda today. We'll have a quick introduction of our speaker, Dr. Andrey Bychkov. We will then move on to the presentation, followed by a Q&A session, and then a quick feedback survey. Our speaker today is Dr. Andrey Bychkov. He's the Director of Digital Pathology from Kameda Medical Center in Japan, where he's tasked with overseeing all the digital pathology and artificial intelligence initiatives of the Histopathology Laboratory. He is board certified in anatomical pathology with a special interest in thyroid, endocrine, and digital and computational pathology. He is also the section editor for the Pathology Outlines and on the board for the Journal of Pathology and Translation Medicine. Dr. Andrey has authored over 70 articles, and he presents regularly at various conferences and pathology meetings. With that, I'd like to turn the floor over to Dr. Andrey.
So thanks for introduction again, and thanks everyone for joining my talk today. I would say good afternoon. I hope there are some people from different time zones which I can greet at good morning and maybe good night, someone. Let's see. Well, so last 2 years we were working very intensely with digital pathology in Japan, and I'm happy to share our knowledge and achievements with you. You may realize from this outline that this talk will be quite comprehensive, and this is not surprising because digital pathology is almost shaped out as subspecialty today. My aim is to share as much as possible within allowed time slot, and to keep you here, several important topics were moved to the end. Please keep that in mind. So let's go ahead and start with numbers. Very recently, JAMA Network reported on trends in the United States and Canadian pathologists' workforces from 2007 to 2017. And main conclusions here, you can see that while the number of physicians grows, pathologists decrease, a number of residents does not increase, a number of amount of specimens and cancer cases per pathologist increased by 50%. This is what is going on in North America, let's say the most advanced country in medicine, but yeah. I'm broadcasting from Japan, and definitely you would like to make the question, is it the case of Japan? Let me show what is going on with pathologists here in Japan. Just very briefly, you know that Japanese people, they are so obsessed with everything cute, and pathologists here are cute too, but they are rare species. And I will try to explain you how rare. Well, these are my own estimates. Probably this is the first time I create this slide and show to the people. Once again, these are just estimates of pathologists per 1 million population based on informal and formally collected data over the last year. So please don't take it as robust data, but as a reference, I think it's okay. So I divided this density of pathologists roughly in 3 tiers, tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3, and there is something in between. So once again, if we consider North American experience as the gold standard, they have something like 40-50 pathologists per 1 million population, which we may call as sufficient, relatively, because of course, North American doctors and pathologists, they complain about that we need more pathologists involved and more residents, everything. But anyway, let's consider this as sufficient. And what we have in Japan, everything below this number by definition is lacking of workforce. What we have in Japan is a definitely shortage, is 3 times less than the USA. And what is going on the worldwide scale in Southeast Asia, Asia in general, in South America, let's say in Eastern Europe, is even severe lack of pathologists. So to summarize about what is going in pathology field today, once again on the worldwide scale, pathology services are under pressure. A first aspect is a shortage of pathologists themselves, and second is a growing workload. Definitely there should be a lot of efforts put to resolve this situation, and efforts in different directions. And one of these directions is believed is digital pathology. Why digital pathology? You know, this alone could be a topic of the whole lecture for 30 minutes or 1 hour. I just make a short summary here, and this is my personal word cloud featuring the top values of digital pathology. A keyword number 1 for me is a telepathology, which means accessing slides and making diagnosis remotely. I may call this concept as anytime, anywhere. Number 2 is access to subspecialties, once again using the means of telepathology. Number 3 for me is a teaching, but as you see, this cloud is quite huge and there are many benefits which need like discussion, and each of these benefits can be explained in 3-5 minutes. So we just go ahead. And I'm gonna remind you about the current applications of digital pathology. I'm gonna call it DP or whole slide imaging, WSI. So it spans through education and research to clinical applications. The people who join us today from academia, they might be quite familiar with these parts and involvement of whole slide imaging into education and research. And you have, guys, your personal experience with that. But the most important parts, no doubt, is the clinical application. And while the most important, it's also the most difficult to afford. And clinical applications of digital pathology themselves, it's also spanned from primary diagnosis to second opinion or consultation, and more activities like making digital archive, quality assurance, and what just got recent recognition and why the claim is computer-assisted diagnosis, like image analysis and artificial intelligence. Implementation of digital pathology into the diagnostic workflow is a current worldwide trend. As you could see from the literature, there are abundant amount of publications reporting on the institutional experience or even on the nationwide scale. This all started from Europe and then expanded to America and in Asia more recently. Important that whole slide imaging for primary diagnosis has been approved in major countries, which are highlighted in red and orange, and this process is ongoing now. To end this short section of introduction, I would like to use a quote from the longtime leader of digital pathology, Professor Anil Parvani from Ohio State University. During his lectures, and I witnessed this several times, Anil likes to repeat that in the future there will be no digital pathology. A digital pathology will be pathology itself, and this will be the way pathology is practiced. But you know what I realized recently? That for us here at our institution, in our network, digital pathology is not a future, but it's present. And I'm gonna explain you why. So let me share with you our digital pathology journey. We aimed initially to build up a model digital pathology network in multi-hospital environment. And our priorities were initially shifted to clinical applications of digital pathology, particularly making primary diagnosis, which means sign out without any glass slides or microscope. Nagasaki Kameda Digital Pathology Network was fully established in 2017. It connects academic institution Nagasaki University here on the left With a large-scale medical center where I'm located at the moment, Kameda Hospital here on the right, and there are several independent or affiliated centers in between. So the longest distance between two our major locations, it's more than 1,000 kilometers, and here you can see our annual load at the moment. But we are dynamically developing, so if I'm making this presentation next year, there's gonna be different composition. Well, here is a timeline, which included several important steps. Like we started building a model digital pathology facility quite a long time ago. And there was a way of mistakes and successes. We tested remote consultation, Pathology Medical Center, more recently established a digital pathology hub here at Kameda Medical Center. And this is quite a milestone for us. Later on, we developed and established pathology-free laboratory in the neighboring hospital. And the most recent achievement probably is to building a pathology radiology center in Tokyo. Definitely, this is related to implementation, but each of these milestones required a sequence of actions, from making project and acquiring funding to testing vendors and solutions, working with the local IT team, which is very important to make possible integration of your digital pathology solution with LIS and EMR. Of course, it's the training of staff and convincing of staff to work, and finally switching the workflow and going beyond the biopsies, something like integrating radiology, AI, and more, which I'm gonna speak later. Of note that each further step, as you could see from this timeline shown here, each further step was shorter due to gaining experience and ready solutions. This is just a set of pictures to show that in many locations, we literally went from zero to a fully established digital pathology lab. And once again, I'm making accent on the word digital because in this huge office, we have no any microscope here, as you could see. Speaking about technical setup, we use multi-vendor solution. We are not stick to any particular vendor, and you may realize why, because we had a long way of trial, different companies, different scanners, some of them are even non-existing today. So we digesting everything from the low cost to high volume, and here on the left plane, you may see brands of the hardware, something like manufacturers of the scanners, which we use in our network today. And on the right, the more like software solutions, which are helping with the web communication between different locations, like digital archiving and some tools for the daily work, and also AI are shown here. Well, I put Philips in the core here. It's not because of this is a Philips seminar, but it's really a core of our system. And I'm gonna explain on a few slides what is special here. It's important to know that Philips solution, which is called Philips IntelliSci Pathology Solution, or PIPS or PIPS, it's not just a scanner. And this message I'm gonna repeat several times during this presentation. So just to have a scanner is not enough. And what we have here, it's not just a scanner, what is offered by Philips. It also image management system viewer, and it's also image management system server, which offer you storage software. And on top, what we have for sure is on-site service and support and maintenance coming from the vendor. But yeah, of course, it's all started with the scanner. An ultra-fast scanner, which we are using in a daily mode. There are several specifications which are described here in details, but most notable for us are a huge slide storage capacity and the fast speed. To be honest, as medical doctors, we don't deal with this machine on a daily basis because these are our technicians who are managing all the process of the loading and bar and tagging and troubleshooting. So basically, we just know about these two most important characteristics which I mentioned to you. And what is really makes sense for us as medical doctors are features of the IMS or Philips viewer. IMS is an image management system, which is a browser-based, which could be Chrome or whatever Internet Explorer. It is important, could be integrated in your local LIS laboratory information system. This is exactly what we are having here at our location. And there are a lot of various handy tools. And the most awesome of them, which I use every single day a lot, are annotations. We also can do measurements. We also can compare, like shown here, AHE versus immunostaining slides with automatic image alignment, navigation and path tracking, and built-in image sharing tools. And on top, it's not just a viewer, but also allows to make a case distribution. Yeah, just to complete about here, if you never had experience going through the Philips Image Viewer, I highly recommend you to request a demo and to learn everything. It's really nice toy to play with. Well, here is the IT architecture. In our multi-hospital settings, it's quite complex, and it was built by the local IT teams in a tight collaboration with the Philips. And once again, I recommend you to reach out to Philips guys to learn more about all those servers and firewalls and options for the storage and hot storage and cold storage and archiving and everything. So they are really IT people and will be able to explain you all the details. I'm not going to spend more time on that. Well, let's touch to the base. And this is my desk with 3 screens. Is the usual setup for the so-called diagnostic workstation, or some people call this as a cockpit for digital pathologists. So we choose to work with 2 or 3 screens instead of the single screen, which actually central screen is, you can see the image viewer itself. On the left is LIS with patient records. I can also access to EMR. And on the right is a case management system and web communication system. With different windows means different doctors from different locations joining this session, and I can reach out to them without any difficulties. Well, you know, such setup with several screens, it's very helpful to make a correlation while you are dealing with diagnostic process. For example, we can plot on one screen radiology, on another screen growth from your LIS. We can do correlation between the grossing and microscopy, or between histology and cytology, for example. So all of this facilitates a lot of our diagnostic process. This thing is very important, is a web communication. Once again, I'm speaking not about our single location as a laboratory. I'm speaking about our network, which connects many hospitals and many laboratories. So having web communication efficient and robust is very important. And for that, you can rely on any vendor. What we choose for ourselves, that we use a Cisco WebEx. We connect institutions and rooms by this system, which offers secure online channel. Usually we open from the early morning to the late night. And it helps us to have the regular sign-out sessions using the WebEx. And we are fully accessible for consultation from different locations, remote frozen service or whatever, some administrative discussions. So in a real time, that's very important. I would say if Philips, like in the heart of our digital pathology system, then web communication is probably something like a nervous system, like a spinal cord for us. Schematically here, I would like to show how our sign-out session is looking. Well, virtual slides are usually shared on the screen. And please note that this particular sign-out session is also having educational aim. For that, there are several people involved, expert pathologists and junior pathologists and residents who are either on-site or joining remotely. And once again, using web communication, we can easily discuss cases and make a diagnosis and teach our juniors with all the possible annotations, tools, and everything. So once again, this setup for education, it's interesting. It offers not only to have the teaching session, but at the same time, you see, we have several expert pathologists who are reviewing the same case, and they put in those 2 signs, let's say, or 3 signs under difficult diagnosis. So that means that we simultaneously making double check and validated diagnosis. It's also kind of quality assurance. This is an example of the regular week timetable with several scheduled sign-out sessions per day, also added by consultations and also added by the lectures, multidisciplinary team discussions, web conferences, journal clubs, and whatever. So this every single day is full, and it's filled up with these education sessions and consultations using the WebEx based on the digital slides that we can produce with the scanner. Well, if I were asked to summarize what digital pathology meant for us, that could be an answer. It's a higher quality of diagnosis because of team approach. It's instant access to expert opinion within the whole network. It's possibility to employ innovative approaches, something like integrating radiology and pathology, dealing with AI and digital cytology. It is also immediate access to case history and access to the cases from home or conferences. And of course, these are definitely research opportunities, which I'm going to speak a little bit later. That's an important slide for us. So in a few years, just in a few years, we were able to go 100% digital for biopsies, for surgicals, immunostates, outside consults, frozen, and more and more and more. And I'm proud to announce that the last year, we received 100% digital award from Philips, which placed us at that moment among the top 5 fully digitized laboratories in the world. And we were first in Asia. Of course, today this field is bustling very fast, and the number of these laboratories is growing, and number of these awards is growing. But we already got our space, and once again, we were first fully digitized lab in Asia, this scale. Well, and you know, yeah, these are our achievements. And as I mentioned to you, there are several fully digitized labs in the world. But I want to share with you that this is just, in my humble opinion, that probably we are doing even better than our competitors, because we use routinely digital cytology, radiology integration, and AI on a daily basis. Here is a good example just to show you. Our team developed AI algorithms for detecting lymph node metastasis of lung cancer and also assessing tumor cellularity in lung biopsies. It's important for sending specimens for molecular settings. The former study was published last year in the prestigious American Journal of Pathology, and I may say that more than 10 studies are in progress at the moment or have been presented at major conferences, something like USCAP or Pulmonary Pathology Meeting or Digital Pathology Association. Just one slide to show that we are also able to do digital cytology. Probably Philips is not the one who is actively employed for that, but we were able to use other vendors, and we use this information cytology to integrate in with the histopathology to make the correct diagnosis, also to make a research. So we presented about that probably a couple of years ago at Pathology Visions, major conference for digital pathology in America. And most recently, last year, we presented at RSNA and USCAP several months ago about our unique radiology pathology integration approach, once again to resolve the diagnosis of challenging cases. Well, and the very last slide about us, these are unique features of our system and of our network. International team. Well, for some people, let's say from Australia, that maybe not sounds quite appealing, but you know, Japan is still isolated community, and having and building international team here is not so easy. And we are one of the few institutions with many employees and researchers from abroad, from outside Japan. Education is a top priority for us. Education of pathology residents, of rotating clinical fellows, and undergraduate medical students. And number three probably is a deep incorporation of cytology and radiology for correlation with histopathology, which I just showed you a couple of slides before that. And here we arrive to the most anticipated part, probably, how to start, implement digital pathology. You know, over the last several years, I listened many lectures, added on top by my own experience. And if you ask what we need to start digital pathology, here is my short answer, because we have not much time. And you need the essential three. Number one, no doubts, you need to have a driver or leader, or as UK people like to say, champion. Who is that? That's a person who is familiar with basics, who knows the market, educated, enthusiastic. Without this guy, you cannot start. Second, you need money, for sure. And for that, you need support by your executives. And number three, is also very important. You cannot have a success without that. You need to have your own IT team for integration of digital images into the laboratory information system and routine workflow of your pathology laboratory. One of the topics I may comment here is about money, because it's a favorite topic, to be honest. And when people make presentation about basics of digital pathology and implementation, almost nobody shows how much money they spend. Well, I'm quite transparent with you, and these are approximate cost of our equipment, including scanner and server and infrastructure. You might be surprised, especially if you have not dealt with digital pathology before, that scanner itself is not the most expensive item in the list. Please note that investments in IT infrastructure could be comparable and even exceed those of the scanner, especially in mid-term and long-term perspective. So I want you to learn from this slide, not about the numbers, because these are in Japanese, but please note this ratio. And investments to the IT infrastructure are quite considerable. It's also relevant to the money, how we can measure benefits of digital pathology, how we convert benefits of digital pathology to money, all those advancements. Just giving you, there are actually very few publications on this topic, and I can show you a couple of them. For example, this is about metrics of evaluating benefits. This study from Netherlands, they use a metrics of time savings, and they show that in their lab, they save about 20 hours daily using digital pathology. This is most recent study from Spain, which use another measurement, which they call increased efficiency, and they prove that in their settings, they sign out let's say, more than 20% cases per year. Well, this is a frequently cited paper from UK on projected ROI, return of investment. They performed quite complex estimates, not actually linked to any existing lab. So the lesson learned from here, and it's actually work in the real life, that the higher caseload you have, the earlier returns you may expect. And as one of the examples of the low volume laboratory, if you're on a very low volume of the cases and you buy an expensive scanner, you may never get any ROI. But the more number of cases you're digesting, the higher and the chance and the quicker you will get your money back. It is projected, please note. This is not real laboratory. These are just projections. And the most recent publication, it's a study from Memorial Sloan Kettering, and a projected saving were reported in this paper more than $250,000 per year, secondary to personnel restructuring, decreased vendor services due to decreased need for transport, glass slides, already availability of whole slide images. Then they projected this calculation to 5-year period and end up with almost $1.5 million, once again, in their own settings with their own setup. You know, all these papers, they use the words like projections, estimates, and to be honest, we have no, at the moment, this is just my opinion, good metrics and robust data about ROI, and these data are expected to be produced in the future when we are having more experience with digital pathology from different locations. Important, implementation. In a simple sense, there are 3 phases you need to go through. It's a phase of pre-implementation when you're supposed to define your need, goals, and objectives, identify required infrastructure, secure resources. Phase 2 is implementation itself. When you're acquiring and building infrastructure, you train implementation team and pathologists. You define workflow and configure system, write SOPs, validate system, and finally go live and enjoy. It's not over here, because at the 3rd phase, you need to assess efficiency and probably expand to new applications. Well, this is a theory, and here is a real life. In real life, you need to discuss hundreds of questions with your team and sponsors and vendors and IT people, especially if you are going to use digital pathology for primary diagnosis on a large scale. How to learn about digital pathology and how not to miss even single of these questions, which you need to consider before implementation. Well, at the very beginning, you may be very much overloaded and confused with all the new terminology, especially from IT field. So solution number 1, or recommendation number 1, get the basics of digital pathology. I just mentioned at the very beginning that digital pathology is almost a subspecialty today, but we have no any textbooks, and it's developing too fast to fit to any textbook. It will be outdated very soon. So one of the possible solutions, and my personal recommendation, go and do training using digital pathology certificate program by DPA, Digital Pathology Association, and NSH, National Society for Histotechnology, USA-based. You can do this program and this certification cycle remotely, and that was my case. It's not expensive. It includes 7 modules covering about 30 topics, which is accumulated for more than 20 hours of online lectures. by the leading authorities in the field. Then it followed by MCQ examination, and you also get in your certificate from these organizations. So far, it's a very good solution, and I recommend you to make a note about this program. I think this is the only available in the field today, and don't miss this opportunity to get the basics of the digital pathology. And just to get the basics is not enough. Number two, you need to stay tuned. Absolutely, because we just mentioned that knowledge in this field is updating so fast. Something new is coming, some vendors disappear, new approaches, AI. So to stay tuned, I recommend you to keep your eye on the core conferences annually. And top among them are USCAP, Pathology Informatics Summit by API, Association of Pathology Informatics. And probably the leading event, which is organized by the Digital Pathology Association, is an autumn meeting on the annual basis, which is called Pathology Visions. So all of them are in North America. In addition to that, of course, you need to learn about who are the leaders of digital pathology and maybe try to have connections with them and keep in touch and learn from them and visit their lectures, listen their lectures on YouTube. And the core universities and facilities here are Ohio State, University of Michigan, University of Pittsburgh in America, University of Leeds in Europe. And think about our network in Asia. We are always welcome to host people for the short time, for several hours, for several days, and to show how everything is working in our orchestra. Well, in addition, you need to communicate definitely with industry representatives, scanner vendors, software providers, AI developers, and get the news either from social media, following digital pathology leaders, influencers, hashtags, and going through the news on aggregators and webinars. And one of the good examples, yeah, we are hosting, it was postponed, of course, because of the COVID. We are hosting the meeting in next February with all the top leaders. There is no doubt they are supposed to be either physically, let's see, or online to join our meeting and to give their keynote lectures. So please save this date for your calendar and keep in touch with us about this event, how to join, either come to Japan if borders are open or join online and get benefits of this event. Well, the last thing, probably I have no any note coming from the moderator. So if I have a couple of minutes, I will just show you several slides because I was asked to comment about COVID era, what is going on with digital pathology, why COVID-19 pandemic served as a driver for digital pathology. This is what we encountering at the moment. And it's very simple to explain, and I will just plotted several screenshots to show you the timeline, what happened. That after pandemic went full speed, which severely interfered public access to the healthcare. Leading societies worldwide, they started campaign to promote remote diagnosis or digital pathology. So there were several notes issued by the College of American Pathologists, Royal College of Pathologists, and Digital Pathology Association to facilitate the regulatory process of the digital pathology. And FDA responded quickly and issued the guidance to expand availability of devices for whole slide imaging. So in turn, this helped vendors to pass FDA clearance, either for their laboratory information systems or for the scanner vendors. Well, and recently, several teams, such as Digital Pathology Association or Leeds University, they run survey about impact of COVID pandemic on your particular laboratory. So this is what I'm able to share with us. As you see, we were quite integrated to the digital pathology and did not experience much changes in our workflow. But I know that outside institutions, they really consider it to switch to digital because of the COVID. So I think I'm getting to the end. I will not go to details, only if you have a question. I may show you this again about impact COVID on our laboratory. So take-home message for you. As very simple, as a take-home message, I would like to use words of Sylvia Asa, eminent pathologist and also a digital pathology pioneer in Canada, who said, and I agree with her completely, that digital pathology is the best way to make pathology fun again. That's it, and I'm open to your question. Yeah, Ashley, forwarding to you.
Thank you, Dr. Andrey. That was a fantastic presentation. We do have some questions that have come up on the Q&A chat box. So the first question is, can you speak a little bit more about sort of what's next for you at Kameda, and especially with AI?
All right. Yeah, as I mentioned that to deal with AI applications, you really need to have a good backup by your IT people or young generation who are familiar with IT and coding. We started to work on that probably several years ago. So at the moment, we already got initial experience, which was, as I showed you several slides ago, released in publications. So we may say that we have a team at the moment who are working on that project. And basically, it's relevant to research at the moment, because we have academic institution as a part of our network, and this is actually having university as a part of your network is a good driver, particularly for AI projects. And the next step out of those projects, which I mentioned, relevant to the lung cancer or estimating cellularity in cancers, well, is to make it really implemented in your daily life, which definitely will take more time. And to learn more about it, I just recommend you to follow publications and scientific research output coming from our department with our names. And definitely, I promise you, over the several next months and years, you will get something popping up very exciting and interesting.
Thank you. Our second question is really about your experience with DP, digital pathology for frozen section diagnosis. Perhaps you can comment a little bit more on what you are doing there.
Yeah, we use it actually, I think today we are using it for frozen and from several. Yeah, I need to introduce, when I mentioned to you about 3 essential things. Number 1, to start digital pathology, you need to have a leader. And I'm not the leader, actually, number 1. This is a top leader of the guy who built the whole network in all different locations. This is Professor Fukuoka. So why I refer to him? Yeah, I noticed today he helped to diagnose remote frozen from maybe somewhere from Nagoya, like that, 500 kilometers from here. Yes, we work with that. It's not easy. We tried different scanners. We tried different solutions. So far, we have a temporary option to deal with that. We use a low volume scanner for 6 slides. And we are still testing this approach. There are actually challenges related to that. They are more like technical challenges, but so far in this trial period is going well. Just to be clear, we cannot manage that with the Philips, and I think Philips scanner is not intended for the frozen sections, the same as with cytology specimens at the moment. So we have solution we can share in details if the person could reach out to us, let's say through this email, and talk more about it, because it's not so easy to manage, to be honest.
Sure, thank you. This is a question from Dr. Sandy from Hong Kong, and her question is there any pathologist in the network that is working regularly offsite, from home or some other remote location?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, definitely we have these people like Masuzawa Sensei, right? She's working regularly from home. And once again, it was prompted by the pandemic, actually. So this is applicable to our senior pathologists who feel themselves in a risk zone. And initially, they could be reluctant to do digital pathology. They love microscope and everything, but they changed immediately their opinion. We set up a remote workplace for them, and they could manage and they could adapt very quickly to deal with virtual slides. So yes, we have those people on a regular basis.
Okay. We have a couple of questions related to sort of pricing and return on investment. So I'll sort of group them together. I think the question was, what was the price to build up the digital pathology network, the Nagasaki Kameda network, and also a little bit, perhaps you can explain more about how did you all achieve your return on investment, and what do you mean by that higher load that you mentioned on your graph?
Well, yeah, answering the good opportunity to refer first question to Professor Fukuoka. So I give him 1 minute to prepare because he spent a lot of money for that. If I can share my screen again, I would go back to that slide. So higher load is about annual number of specimens or slides which you are able, these are number of specimens or glass slides per year. Actually, there is a confusion when we do these calculations in digital pathology field, because vendors, they are calculating everything in slides. We are pathologists or our technicians, we calculating everything in cases. That's why there is a discrepancy, because case can be of 1-2 slides or can be of 10-15 slides, or autopsy case of 50 or to 100 slides. So the metrics was used here is the number of specimens per year in your laboratory. And the conclusion of this team from UK, once again, these are just projections based on the formula, that if you have very low number of cases of specimens per year, when you try to balance with some, let's say, high volume and expensive scanner, you probably cannot return any money back. But if your load is, let's say, 40K per year or 80K, you need to be, I don't know, maybe university network to manage so huge number of specimens per year. For example, it's not not the right word, affordable. It's not common in Japan to have this high load of the specimens per year annually. Well, but if you have so, then you have a higher chance to get your money back. And actually, there are many questions behind. Yeah, what metrics to use? How to convert those hours into money? How to calculate your investments which you made initially? That's why, as a conclusion here, even we have a, let's say, good study coming from the Memorial Sloan, and as you see here from their graph, first you're just investing money, investing a lot during 1-2 years. And only after that you're getting to plateau, and only after maybe 5-7 years with their huge load, I'm pretty sure they have quite a huge load of specimens, Memorial Sloan Kettering. You may cross money spent without digital pathology and finally have some ROI. But to me, keywords from all these papers are projections and estimates. I don't think at the time we have a good metrics for that and good evidence for ROI. Yeah, I'm getting these questions quite frequently. I'm trying to trace all the publications and discuss with vendors as well and people who are dealing with digital pathology on a daily basis. And I think it's still a gray zone for us to have a clear answer to this question. And how much?
Well, actually, I cannot, answer in a simple way, about like a yen-wise, dollar-wise. It depends actually, but for us, it's about roughly $1 million for covering the 3 institutes. And you need to think about the storage, which is different when how much the storage you need for cases, how much volume you have, and you would really decide the price for that. Yeah, I think it depends. $500,000 can be enough for some institute. For us, it's like $1 million for covering 3.
But if I make the question, do you need $1 million to start digital pathology? Probably no. So if you have 50K, can you make it in a small lab like we have in one of our locations with a small lot of specimens? We even have no pathologists. So we just invested money, let's say like 30,000 or 50,000 into the low volume scanner. And I think we are pretty happy with that.
Yeah, and actually so that completely depends. So you can, if you want to start with a very minimum things, and it's possible with less than 100. Yeah, but I think it really requires more people's effort on top of it.
Right.
More like a labor, manually.
Yes. Yeah. That's why it's difficult to. That's why we have estimates, we have projections, we have no clear answer at the moment.
Maybe we have time for perhaps one last question. How long did it take you all to become familiar with digital slides?
For me, 10 minutes. So, I came to Japan 3 years ago, or 2.5 years ago. We had already completely set up digital pathology laboratory. That room which I show you, we have no microscope. So I sit to my workspace, to my working place, and I never touched microscope since that time. I'm pretty happy with that. I know that this question may have another sub question about the validation. For example, there are guidelines issued by the Royal College of Pathologists and University of Leeds team were developing that you need to spend 2 months sitting and matching glass slides with the virtual slides. In my opinion, is too much. I agree with that we need some validation, which is just like 60 cases by the College of American Pathologists guidelines. But you are getting to be familiar very quick. And if your image quality, if your scanner quality is good, you really no need any more glass slides because you have many handy tools, particularly annotations and more on the top, which you are missing a lot when you're dealing with the glass slides. So yeah, that's the answer. It's a short time, just a couple of minutes to get familiar with that.
Okay, thank you so much for your questions, everybody, and Dr. Andrey, thank you so much for your time during the session. That concludes today's session, but if you we'd love to hear your feedback. Please take a minute to complete this survey. I'll keep it up on the screen for a couple of seconds, just so that you can take your phone and capture the QR code on the screen, and please share your feedback. This really helps us improve our session and helps us improve our webinars and also bring more content to you.
Yeah, and Ashley, I could see there are actually a number of questions. If we have if we know who exactly sent the question, I may probably reply by email shortly, not to leave people not satisfied with what we had. Or you may guys just reach out through Philips or directly to me with your questions. I would be happy to spend more time to explain and to share our experience. We really feel ourselves as pioneers or promoters of digital pathology in this Asian region. And we are really open and welcome to host people. If you come in to see Sakura in Japan, remember we have a wide network of our hospitals and laboratories. Just stop by for half a day and see how we are doing, and you can make all your questions and share your experience with us as well. We are continuing to learn, not only teach, to learn every day about this technology.
Thank you. Thanks, Dr. Andrey. This is our upcoming webinar next month. It's a webinar series about how to go digital, and also we speak about open pathology and AI with Curative and IBEX, two of our AI vendors who work very closely with Philips. There is a QR code as well, link on the screen. Please take your phones, and you can also register very quickly right now. With that, I want to thank our speakers, Dr. Andrey and Professor Fukuoka, for making a cameo appearance. Thank you so much for all your feedback that you all have given. I think this is great for our participants. I think it helps them bring more institutions to become 100% digital. Thank you so much. And with that, everybody, thank you and have a great day.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.